Yo, what's going on? Today we're going to be comparing the AK versus the SCAR. We're going to figure out which gun is actually better. We're going to use every single stat, pro/con, if you should use it in pubs, competitive games, etc. All in this video. We're going to go down to exactly what gun you should use. We're going to use examples from actual competitive gameplay. What's more accurate, what's less accurate, what's easier to get used to, what's less easy to get used to, what takes more time to, etc. Every single last thing about AKs and SCARs, we're going to go just compare both of them, and I'm going to give you a final decision on what is better, what you should use. And yeah, so if you've already doubt, definitely stick around and we'll go over what is the better weapon. Also, make sure to subscribe if you haven't already. It's free. We're nearing 3,000 subscribers as well. So if you don't want to miss a future upload like weapon leaks, etc., just make sure to. Alright, so let's first talk about the SCAR. So as you know, the SCAR at the beginning used to be a pretty bad weapon. No one really used it back then. But then it got buffed like crazy. So for like an hour, it did like 40 damage. Or no, the best weapon did like 30 damage. But then it obviously got nerfed. But then it got nerfed again. So that is why everyone's like, is the AK better now? Because a lot of people are starting to use the AK over the SCAR. So let's go down with the SCAR stats first and see exactly what is up with the SCAR. So as we know, SCAR lasers a lot. It can melt someone really fast. So yeah, that is so let's get into the exact stats then. So here's the pros of the SCAR. The pros of the SCAR are it's more accurate than other AKs. I think everyone can agree with this. Like, if you use a SCAR, you're gonna it's a lot more accurate. When using an AK, it's a 3-shot burst. So if you shoot one time at the right side, all 3 of those bullets are going to the right. None of them are gonna actually hit the player. So you have to have like super good aim with with the AK. While the SCAR, you just have to like hold it and shoot at the player and you're good. Doesn't mean that it's less skillful. It just means it's usually easier to aim with and get used to. It also has an extremely high DPS. The DPS on SCARs are absolutely insane. It has its reload time is pretty long, so that's definitely a con. But it's really good for mid-range, close range, and long range. So long range it works, close range it works, mid-range it works. That's really good about this SCAR because not a lot of ARs work every single range, but SCARs are it's a really good close range. You could use a SCAR over an SMG if you really wanted to. It wouldn't be that big of a deal. And it's very high damage. I mean, everyone can probably agree that SCAR is very high damage compared to other weapons, and it does tons of damage. Now let's go to the cons. It uses up ammo really fast, and this happens its fire rate isn't the fastest the whole time, but it has 24 bullets in its reload. So the second that you use all 24 of those bullets, you have to wait 1.5 seconds to use it again. So if you use SCAR, you know that once you run out of bullets, you have to have another weapon, or you're gonna have to reload for there. You're just gonna have that awkward silence of 1.5 seconds of just sitting there trying to reload your SCAR so you can shoot again. So that's a very big con of the SCAR. Also the really slow reload time. And it also makes you slower. So I don't know if you guys knew this, but SCAR makes you slower. I think most people know this, but whenever you hold out the SCAR in your inventory, it actually does make you slower. Now, I don't think everyone knows this, but it does in fact make you slower. So that's the SCAR. Now let's move on to the AK and see the pros and cons of that. Alright, so now let's move on to the AK. So the pros of the AK are it does very high damage. I'm not positive it's the highest damage out of all the ARs, but it's very high damage compared to most ARs. So, and to the SCAR, it also is pretty high damage. It also has really good accuracy as well. Not as good accuracy as the SCAR, but I would definitely say the SCAR has a lot better accuracy in terms of you're more likely to hit shots. But it also has really good range. I mean, its range is more long and medium. So if you're trying to use an AK close range, it's probably not going to be as powerful as the SCAR would be close range, but it still has good range in terms of how long it can shoot. It also uses up ammo a lot slower than ours. So, for example, if you shot a SCAR and an AK at the same time, you would be reloading your SCAR way before you were reloading your AK. Like, you would be able to shoot 2 rounds of scars probably before you could even finish your AK. That might be a little bit over exaggeration, but basically the point is that AKs are like you can shoot for a while, and the reload is also like quite slow. So that's the pros of the AK. Again, reload time is really important because we're comparing the SCAR and the AK, and the SCAR's reload time is not the best, but the AK's time is actually pretty low. So the cons are it's unsuitable for extremely close range. Yeah, it like I said before, it just doesn't really work close range. Close range, the AK is not going to be the weapon you want. You're definitely going to use an SMG. AKs don't work because it does 3 bullets. If you miss those shots, you're pretty much screwed. Even if you hit all 3 shots, I mean, if you have like a blue AK, you're doing 17 damage or 16 damage per shot. 3 of those, you did 45 damage, which is pretty much nothing. The SCAR would do a lot more. So another con is it has a low DPS, meaning damage per second. The damage per second is quite low, which is why it's not the best close range, because you want as high a damage per second as possible. That's why people use SMGs close range. But it still takes a while before all the ammo like burns out. So yeah, that's another con of the AK. Also, trying to spray with the AK is not a good idea since it delays multiple shots. So yeah, it's trying to spray. Like, when you shoot 3 bullets with the AK, you can use double AK technically. I got nerfed, but I guess you could still technically use AK. But yeah, so that's basically the pros and cons of the AK. Now let's move on to what the actual best weapon. So after we learned about the AK pros and cons, the SCAR pros and cons, what is the actual best weapon and what should fit you? So basically, if you have been using the SCAR for a while, which I know I have. I mean, it got buffed. It was the best AR, undeniably the best AR by far. Some people are gonna say AK was better even before it got nerfed, but I disagree with that tons. I think that the SCAR was easily the best back then. But either way, is it the best now? So the SCAR, if you've been using for a while and you're really used to it, I think personally you should still use it unless you've used the AK a lot. Like, I barely use the AK. This is what happened for me. I used the AR-15 way back when. Like, I used the AR-15 for like 2 years straight, and then I used the SCAR. So I've never really used the AK before. I've never like picked up an AK and actually like used them much. Like, unless I had to and there's no other ARs or no other guns, I would always use the SCAR. So, or an AR-15. I would never use AK. So personally, I like the SCAR over the AK. If I find a golden SCAR and a golden AK, I'm gonna take the golden SCAR 9 out of 10 times. Although, I think if I find a gold SCAR, but I find a mythic AK, I'll take the mythic AK. But it's pretty much comes down to preference. But I think that if you've been using AK and you're good with AK, you should 1000% use AK. It's not even close. If you are good with AK, like if you've been using AK, you're used to it, then definitely use AK. It's really worth it if you get used to it. It's a really OP weapon. It can laser like crazy, but you're just gonna have to get used to it, and then you will probably dominate with it. It's definitely better than the SCAR at the moment. I still like SCAR better just because I hit a lot more shots with the SCAR. I feel like I still kill people faster, but AK, if you get used to it, can at this moment definitely laser people more. And the big problem with the SCAR is the reload time, where you literally sit there for a second half. That's why it doesn't really work in comp. I'll take AKs over SCARs in comp, but in pubs I will not. I would take SCARs over AKs. But so yeah, that's pretty much what you should take. If you have any comments or questions down below, make sure to comment down below. I can answer anything you want. Like, if you're like, this is my playstyle, what should I do? Then yeah, I can definitely let you know. But thank you for watching. Subscribe if you've not already. We're nearing 3,000 subscribers. And yeah, peace.